Okay, are we ready?
Yeah, did everyone agree to the live stream?
Okay.
Are you
Well,
letting people in? Okay, people are being let in.
awesome.
Do, 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 do.
The background music.
Right.
Okay. I see some names of near ones and dear ones. Hi, Lisa. And Lori's on and Janet.
We can do little dances instead of songs.
Box dances.
Welcome, 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 everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are not having people turn on cameras or their audio, as this is in a panel format. And I need to turn off the sounds I get when people come in. We all might need to do that, AJ, Nancy.
How do you do that?
You go to the people or participants, and then on more, there's a play, join, and leave sound. You uncheck that. Seeing as all of us teachers learn Zoom through like being teachers. We had to learn stuff like this from being the hosts and co-hosts.
And I just had 2 snow days last week, so I got to well, we had 2 virtual days and one classic snow day. All of it due to snow. So I got to relive many memories.
This snow day you speak of, what is this?
When the roads are too bad, it
Well,
just
we get fire days, unfortunately, which is, smoke days.
yeah, I remember those. Snow
Hmm.
days are nicer.
Right? Hmm. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in about a few minutes. This will also be live streamed. It's currently being live streamed to YouTube, as well as it will be available on a recording after the meeting, after the panel. Nancy, do you want to take on as host?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Welcome to San Leandro Teachers Association Disability Justice and Neurodiversity panel. And I really appreciate that the broadness of that title for the panel because neurodiversity exists in a lot of different ways, and there's not necessarily a label or diagnosis that a person has, but it exists and it's in our classrooms. Um, the only mythical being in our classrooms is normal. Normal isn't real. um, we have myself here, Nancy James, and AJ Olson, who will introduce themselves later, and Stephanie Deal. And Ian will be coming on a little later and have a chance to talk with you some. Um, there are a couple things I wanted to say as we get started um, about disability justice and how a pretty simple way to look at it, I think, is to understand that it builds upon the disability rights movement. And the way that it builds upon it is recognizes intersectionality and the ways in which there are diverse systems of oppression that work, they sort of interact to reinforce each other and inequality. And in saying that, we also recognize that all these constructed systems, anything that's constructed can be deconstructed, and that we actually have the ability to co-create something on a lot of different levels and to affect systems in in uh, in our daily interactions with our students and with people in our communities. Um, One of the things, and I don't share this often, but now I'm sharing it a lot, is uh, uh, um, we all have a lot of different experiences in our educational history. And my own experience was one in which I didn't speak in school until I was in second grade. And I wrote everything down, but I did not speak. Now, I was in a generation in which um, educators didn't necessarily look at Black females and think that they would assess them for anything generally. So it was seen as more of a behavior. So I don't give myself a particular label or diagnosis of anything, because that wasn't really done when I was a child. But at the same time, there were a lot of challenges to my own education, particularly early on, um, because I was different. And even my own kindergarten teacher told me I was a pain in the neck to my face. Um, so, uh, so some of those early experiences um, are the reason why I am really passionate about um, being able to create a different reality for students. Um, that being said, I think that's all I need to say. I'm really happy to be here with you. I miss you all. And I'd like to just sort of see which of our panelists would like to start us off, and just introduce yourself, and talk a little bit about what brings you to this discussion and anything else you'd like to talk about for a minute. Should I say who? Okay, AJ.
My name is AJ Olson. I am a junior at San Leandro High School. I have my main diagnosis that impacts, I have Tourette syndrome. I have done a lot of advocacy work in recent years surrounding that. I presented to the San Leandro High School staff about it. But I'm always excited for conversations about disability in the classroom.
Thank you. We have our own Stephanie Deal.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Deal. I am a fifth grade elementary school teacher at James Monroe in San Leandro Unified. I've been formally diagnosed with ADHD when I was the mere age of 7. And then recently have started to explore the autism spectrum within my own self and working on that diagnosis right now. And so these have greatly impacted me over my life, and it affects how I teach. So I have that kind of dual aspect as well.
Thank you for that. I think we already sort of started talking about some of our differences, right? And so our first question is how have your differences or diagnoses affected your classroom experience? And one of the parts of something with that question that I would like to also connect with is like, what experiences made you feel respected and supported as a learner? And if I may, there's anyway, there's a certain kind of presumption of incompetence of certain students, particularly if they walk into a classroom with a label. And so I think the word respected as a learner is really important, because some students are not seen as learners on site. And so if you can just talk to us a little bit about your own experiences in the classroom. AJ, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I feel like for me, I actually have almost the flip side of that, where I've always loved school and like learning and reading. And even when I was going to doctor's appointments 3 or 4 times a week, I was reading in waiting rooms. And it was the reverse of where when I was in classroom experiences, it would be, oh, but you're so good. You're so good in class. Like that's not a problem. It's like I'm really struggling, but you're doing great. And I feel like um, instances where there is support in saying, yes, you're doing great, but how can we make this better? Just because, let's say the bar is just because you're doing the bare minimum and you're doing it doesn't mean that you don't need more support. And teachers and staff members who have been very like, how can we make this better instead of just comparing to the person next saying you're doing fine, but how can we make this more or school a more enjoyable or positive experience?
I like that. So how to enrich that experience beyond what maybe some of the learning targets are that might be in a particular curriculum. Stephanie, would you like to jump in on that?
Yeah, elementary school for me was a little bit of an easier experience, mostly because I was given a 504 plan very early. So being, I guess, as ADHD as I am, I was such a hyperactive, talkative troublemaker might not be the right word, but I was that kid who never shut up. And we, some of us in the room who are teachers have had that student who never stops talking. Doesn't matter who you put them next to. And so being on the other side of that now, I'm like, oh God, I was that kid. But like it really, but I knew everything because it came easily to me. I was one of those kids that came easy at first. But then as things got harder in school, and so into middle school and high school, I really struggled. Um, it was a lot of secondary teachers weren't very good at doing the plans, and were just as hard on expectations. They treated me the same as everyone else, but that wasn't very successful for me. Um, and later on, I struggled through college. I struggled through all these things. And when I did have support, it was often times when it was more of a lecture component or like a certain teaching style like really worked for me, but trying to do homework or trying to have routines that I set for myself was very difficult. So if I could listen to it, I could understand. But if I was in charge of my own space, I wasn't. And so the teachers that were really like, no, we're going to have discussions and we're going to talk it out here, as opposed to a homework emphasis or doing things at home on my own, was really hard for me. And so that's more or less how I got through college and high school, was those opportunities where the teaching style worked for me. I was able to do it. I was able to work in discussion groups and such. And so yeah, that's how it impacted me. Also, like getting oversensitized and anxious around others really is a root of a lot of my talking. So like the social component was really hard for me my whole life.
Mhm.
And making friends. And so teachers who kind of built groups were able to support me better than me picking friends on my own or things like that. I hope I answered parts of the question.
It did. And it makes me think about in San Leandro, I of course worked for a long time as a special education teacher, but in the district I'm in now, I'm specifically a project-based learning teacher. And it's sort of rotated through kind of like cultural arts. And so I see over around 425 students a week, and kids are fully included at my school. And one of the things, it's very exciting for me because when I work with students who are like the students I had, particularly in the moderate severe program in San Leandro, fully included in my classes, I have that opportunity to create that space for them in which, if a kid needs to jump up and run around the room for a minute, they do it. And because of the position I have in that room, the rest of the kids kind of follow my lead. So if that doesn't disrupt for me, it doesn't disrupt for them. And I think I so that's something, because of my experiences, I can bring into the environment I'm in now. So we have just been joined by Ian. And Ian, if you would just introduce yourself and take a few minutes to tell us about your work with BORP.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. I'm glad I can actually join you via my domain. Uh, my name is Ian Gilder. I'm actually a former San Leandro High School graduate of 2018. And I work for, well, first and foremost, I actually participated in BORP when I was 6 years old. And now I actually have the opportunity to work side by side with my coaches, who actually became my bosses. And now I work for them. I've been working for them for 5 years now, and also going to Chabot College. And so what I do for BORP, I am an equipment manager, which that basically means that I'm managing all of the equipment that we offer, whether that be wheelchair basketball, whether that be the sled hockey program, whether that be the outdoors and adventures program, helping, visually impaired people, kind of pushing them around and making sure they can, get around safely. And so I've actually kind of had to minimize what I'm doing um, as of right now. And so what that means is I'm only working on the weekends from on Saturdays and Sundays now. I no longer do Fridays. So Fridays are free for me. And this is due to the medical condition that I had prior to starting my classes at Chabot. I unfortunately had a seizure, so I wasn't able to, work on Fridays anymore. But I still work for BORP, so that's the fun part. I get to play wheelchair basketball, but I also get to learn, not only about myself more, but I also get to learn about what other people need and how I can help them. And so that's a little bit about me. As far as sport goes, school-wise, I'm a sociology major, which is really fun because I get to learn about people and I'm a really people person. So perfect major for a perfect person. So yeah, you're muted.
I'm just talking muted. No. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, no problem.
So we were just talking about our classroom experiences and what things made us feel
Oh yeah,
respected
for sure.
respected and supported as
For
learners.
sure. For sure.
And what was your experience, do you think, as a learner? Did you feel respected and supported as a learner or
Oh
something
man.
else?
So wow. Right to it. Okay. That was, that's the main thing for me is definitely feeling obviously respected in any aspect of life, whether that be in school or not. But the school side of things, I was definitely respected in certain situations. I was actually in the special day program. I actually did two courses. I did the mainstream course, which is with everyone else, with accommodations, which sometimes, most of the majority of the time, got met. But at other times, I kind of had to be that person to kind of speak up and speak out about what I needed done. And that was somewhat hard to do because there was sometimes staff or even teachers that didn't really want to listen, um, or understand. It wasn't so much that they didn't want to listen, it was more that they didn't really understand what I was trying to communicate to them. And so what I did was I went to my counselors and I was like, hey, look, this is what I need. This is what needs to get done within the time period that I have. Here are my dates and deadlines. Can you do this for me? And my teachers, Miss Abadia, my PE teacher, Miss Abadia, but also Miss Lucia, who I had for a very long time, which I miss dearly. I miss them both dearly. They were my top two people that I went to when I had problems. I was like, hey, I have this problem. I need your help. Can you guys help me?
Mhm,
And we figured out a plan of like, this is what you do, this is how it works, so on and so forth.
mhm,
Principals were the same way. I can talk to them and go to them anytime I needed to, you know, and stuff like that. I was a very helpful type person on campus. I kind of just kept everybody happy.
mhm.
That was kind of my role in the sense of the classroom, keeping everybody happy and kind of spreading my good vibes everywhere. So,
All right, thank you.
mhm,
Um, and so we also have a question, a part of that question, and I think we got into it a little bit.
mhm,
Experiences that did not make us feel respected or supported as a learner. And what AJ had to say kind of resonated for me
mhm,
as well. Just sort of being a good student and
mm,
being quiet. Most of
mm,
the time, most
mhm,
teachers loved me because I was quiet, didn't bother
yeah,
anybody, got good grades.
mhm,
But I was also very stressed out and anxious most of the time. And it just,
yeah,
so there were needs, but
mhm,
they weren't seen. Um, and being seen in relation to disability, I think, is really important. We have because there's more than a cultural context for being
mm,
invisible, there's actually a systemic one. Okay.
yes, exactly.
And um, a lot of people don't realize that there were certain body minds. And when I say body minds, I'm talking about people, but there were
Mhm,
some body minds that were not allowed to be seen in public or not supposed to be seen in public
mm, mhm,
and um, are still
yeah,
sometimes treated that way, treated
yeah,
as though they're not meant to be seen or not
definitely.
meant to exist.
Yeah.
And so, Stephanie, I'd like to just get some of your thoughts about that. What sort of things did not make you feel respected and supported as a learner?
Yeah. So with mine being really the neurospicy side of things, um, I can look really typical.
Mm,
Like I'm a jock. I'm a white girl and I'm a jock. Like in a very interestingly space of the Central Valley. I was a star athlete. I had all of these things going for me. I absolutely did not have the brain of a typical person that I was appearing as.
mm,
Um, I might understand academics really quickly, but I'm not able to set up routines for myself at all. Um, and so yeah, what was really difficult for me was honestly just homework. Homework
Same.
was
I can agree with you
impossible.
100%.
Like, and that really impacts how I teach as a teacher.
Mm,
Like
mhm,
I try to make as much adjustment as I can for students with teaching, but like with homework, and it's just I couldn't do it. It was outside of my ability to sit myself down, and being an athlete and a number of other things after school meant I had even less time than another student who might have. So teachers that were able to work with me, or again, really leaned heavy onto the um lecture and in class and hands-on work, I was much more successful. But if it was a teacher who just ran through everything and then assigned it for homework, it was going right over me. So yeah, so that was the didn't feel respected as or supported as respected. I mean, I don't know. I think I was kind of oblivious. I'm 35, it's been a little while, but like I um not feeling respected was more about like not feeling understood. And I feel like I wasn't understood by my peers. And then because I annoyed a lot of my teachers being the chatty one, I feel like sometimes it wasn't safe for me to go to them when I was being bullied.
Mhm.
And so being a problem student myself made it feel like I couldn't go to the teachers when I was being picked on. Like some girls broke down the bathroom stall door while
Mhm.
I was in there, and I didn't feel safe to go to a teacher to tell them or report it.
Mhm.
So like, yeah,
So
I feel like
that's
my relationship with teachers was
interesting. Wow.
impacted.
say that again.
I feel like my relationship with teachers was impacted.
One of the things that the question of homework
Mhm.
brought to mind for me is sometimes when we look at students, and some of the things they're not doing, sometimes we read it as that they won't do it as opposed to can't, like the way that we've created this assignment or assigned this homework. It's not that they won't do it, it's that they can't do it. It's not something that they can access. And it's not a matter of capacity, it's a matter of how it's structured. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, like I always describe executive dysfunction, which is the fancy word for I can't do the thing. Um, Executive dysfunction as like imagine you have to turn on a stove, and for most of you, you just go to the little knob and you turn on the stove. For me, the button doesn't exist. I'm staring at the stove. I know I need to make it go on, but for some reason, everyone can see a button that I can't.
Mhm.
And so that's how I usually describe executive dysfunction. It's truly, it has nothing to do with will. And everyone's like, oh, I also have a hard time getting started on things, or oh, I also procrastinate. I'm like, yes, and I do it so much, or I can't get myself to do the thing so much that I'm crying. Like
Mhm.
it's not like, oh, I'm putting it off or I'm avoiding it or something like that. I want to do it so hard, but can't turn on the ability to do so to the point where I'm miserable.
Mhm.
Like there's a measure of extremes here.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And you were nodding about the homework.
Yeah, I'm actually going through that process as we speak.
Mhm.
Uh, the college level, it just gets worse from here. College level, man, it's definitely like it's, going to college. That's, the transfer process of going from high school to college is definitely super traumatic and super difficult to do. I had to do it, and that was very difficult for me because I wasn't sure what I was walking myself into.
Mhm.
And I'm not very certain of like, I'm a CP kid, so it's really trying to elevate and understand, hey, I have CP, but at the same time, like my brain power is different from everybody else's. So I might need a little bit more, assistance with, note taking and certain homework assignments and more time and stuff like that, but asking for that kind of stuff is really difficult, especially in the college world. Like it's gotten to the point to where they're like, you're an adult now. You have to figure this out.
Mhm.
But now I have, you know, I have this whole team, like my parents and obviously Miss A and Miss Lucia, my high school team, they're still behind me, they're going to be behind me for the rest of my life, pretty much trying to make sure that I have the right steps along with my college counselors that I have at Chabot. But I think, just advocating and being able to speak up about that is the key because saying that, hey, just saying, hey, I can't do it and, not trying is, that's not an option, obviously. You definitely want to give it your all. If you can't, if you try it and see if you can do it. And that's what I would say is like definitely try to see if you can do the homework. And if you can't, that's okay. Just ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, you
Mhm.
know. I was that type of person that would sit back and kind of just be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna try to see if I can figure this out for myself. And then I ended up stressing myself out to the point to where I had seizures. So, stats, for instance, I took stats last semester and I have to take it again in the fall because of the seizures,
Mhm.
because of my stress level. And that's where, the stress level, that's another thing. It's like you have to worry about, building up to their expectations.
Mhm.
It's this barrier that they have set.
Mhm. I'm glad you talked about stress a little bit because I wanted to stress is something that affects teachers a lot as
Oh
well.
yeah, I can tell.
And
I can
and
tell.
we have this we're in this system in which sort of fast equals smart.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
oftentimes kids who can sort of respond quickly are seen as smart,
Mm.
or they seem to access information quickly. So fast equals smart, fast equals smart.
Mhm.
However,
There's the other side of that coin.
yeah, so my question is like, how do educators basically
Mhm.
give that grace to themselves and to students
Mm.
and
Mhm.
recognizing that um one, fast does not equal smart.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we know there are different tests coming and standardized tests coming and things like
Yeah.
that students have to take. How do
Mhm.
we give grace or provide space for students to sort of manage those realities, but also um, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Manage those realities, but also learn at their own pace and not feel bad
Mm.
about it.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I keep going back to my high school. Thank you for letting me go back to my high school days because man, I miss those days like crazy. But yeah, definitely Miss Lucia, she was my rock star in that sense because she was actually the one who kept me together while I was there. She was able to kind of walk me through step by step, piece by piece, to be able to be like, hey, it's okay. Like, take your time, don't rush through it, kind of just sit back and let your brain kind of take a minute to look at the paper and see what you can figure out. And then whatever we don't get, we'll come back to it. We'll circle back.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the thing that I learned from her was like I can take my time and actually learn something by sitting there for maybe like 6, maybe 7 minutes, depending if I'm in a group or if I'm on my own. It all depends on that as well. If you're in a group, it might take longer, but if you're on your own, you can take as long as you want, as
Mhm.
long as you get the work done within the time period that they give you.
Uh-huh.
And so she's like, just look at the information that's given to you, kind of read it over once or twice, even maybe even more. Like me, I have to read things more than once. I have to kind of read it, take a break, go back to it, and then just kind of like see what information I get out of it,
Mhm.
and that's really kind of my tool that I've been using even throughout my college years. I'm in my third year of Chabot and I'm about to be done in 2 years. So
I'm gonna jump in right there.
yeah,
Thank
it's definitely good.
And I want to ask AJ, what does this conversation ignite for you?
On the earlier when we were talking about, I guess, different time and pacing, what I've experienced in a couple different classes that I felt was really helpful for me as someone with multiple health things and ADHD, but also seemed to what I liked for the general class was sometimes when there's like multiple things to do. There's always a lot to do. Um, I've had success where there's like a recommended pacing of this is what maybe the teacher thinks like this might be the best recommended, what I would recommend you do to get things done on time, but also leaving things open to flexibility of saying this is when things are due, this is when things are done, this is what needs to happen. And that provided a lot of flexibility because like I read very fast, but I really struggle to express myself through writing. So you can kind of manage time better as opposed to saying this is reading day and this is writing day when I'm done early on reading day and then writing, I'm like, ah, and freaking out the whole time. So some guidance, which can help with planning, poor planning skills, but also allowing flexibility instead of assuming that everyone is just going to follow the set plan of the days, where sometimes when you fall behind a day, or I miss a lot of school because of medical appointments and things. And when things are on such a strict, you miss one day behind and you're just falling behind. And it just creates this endless, it makes you more stressed. You already missed a day. And then it's hard to catch. It sometimes creates systems that are very hard to catch up from.
Mhm. I want to just ask some of the people who are on this, I don't know, this Zoom. What about you? I know there's teachers here. And if you could just put some things in the chat that sort of respond to this question about how do you manage some of the barriers to your students' learning? I think as educators, one of our primary roles, besides making kids love learning, like making a love of learning possible, is to remove barriers from learning. And not so much, I mean, we get strategies, right? There's always strategies and what's a little deeper than strategies and tricks we go into sort of core philosophies and deep beliefs and attitudes towards students and what they're able to produce in the classroom. So if that makes sense to you, can you sort of just go ahead and put some things in the chat? Let's share out. And I can even read some of those things. Stephanie added, I allow my students and families to determine how much time they want to spend on homework. Let students work together independently as desired. Try getting feedback from students to co-create as much as possible. Well, as we continue the conversation, go ahead and feel free to add some of those things, more of those thoughts you have about that question of what sorts of things you think teachers can do differently or schools can do differently. See, another, really giving students choice in their learning, especially how they can show that understanding. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's great. We have another question, and I think earlier on I sort of talked about how systems are built and they're constructed, and systems can change, and systems can be remade And we're talking about an educational system that includes uh, special services or supports for people who have different needs in the classroom, whether they have a disability or some sort of neurodiversity. If you could freedom dream, and I like that term, and reimagine a school that supported you in all of your needs as a learner, what would that school look like? And that's a deep question. And sort of everyone, if you haven't had a chance to think about that question, I'd love you to just take a pause and a breath to really let that question settle. Because this world needs our imagination. This world needs our vision. And because that is what will drive change. People who can sort of passionately imagine a better world, right? So that being said, what would be your freedom dream? And I'll leave it open. Who would like to sort of jump on that first?
I can go.
Okay.
I think some of them, when I like first saw the question, a lot of the things that I was listing, I was like, but that's like so basic, or like that's kind of what I kind of view sometimes as like the bare minimum. But a lot of times that's what can be the struggle of saying of acceptance or more awareness and knowledge. I've definitely had instances with substitute teachers or other staff members who don't know me, who don't believe me, because they're like, the little information that I know, you're not it, so that must be wrong. And providing opportunities to learn from like this one, which is great, being able to learn from people and share so that we can get, because I think a lot of times and a lot of people that I know, they don't intentionally they don't go into the day being like, I'm going to do something today that's going to make this person mad, but they don't understand what their actions mean and what they mean to different people. I think even sometimes teachers and staff members who are extra well-intentioned can make situations weirder. I've had instances sometimes where teachers want to be like so on top of like accommodations and making sure that they got it, that they're like asking all these extra questions, like maybe in front of other students. That just makes me like, ah. And even like I'm extremely open about my disability with my students and everyone, but accommodations are a whole other like touchy thing that can be kind of weird, and making, I think, telling or providing people with information on how to be the best support and ally to the disability community that they can be, so that we're not expecting we're not expecting them to just guess and try. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. Got it. Ian, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, she actually just brought up, AJ really just brought up a really good point, about the accommodations. My teacher actually, our professor did this today. I was like, okay, I'm fine with it. My professor, she's cool and everything, but I feel like the main thing that teachers and professors, whoever you're dealing with, whether it be faculty or not, they have to remember always that, you know, there's certain things that the students aren't particularly comfortable with talking about. Um, whether that be, accommodations, whether that be learning, tools and things that they need. You want to make sure that you're understanding, hey, this is what if you have a person who is kind of shy and like kind of don't want to like open up, so to speak, you want to be mindful of how you're approaching that situation. You just don't want to just jump right into it because it might scare them off. It might kind of create this dynamic between the teacher or the faculty that's not so, I guess, healthy in uh, retrospect.
Mhm.
You really nailed something about like the power dynamic.
Mhm.
Like this person has power over you. Like this is something as a teacher I always have to remember. I have power over them.
Yeah, yeah.
Power, very Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility.
Facts.
But really, but
No,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I this is such a good point. It also reminds me a little bit what AJ was saying was like when someone gets really excited that they're in their journey of becoming more accepting of others and they're
Yeah,
just gonna dump it all on you. It's like that was
yeah,
for you. It's
yeah.
not for you to start interacting with me like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Which
I've
I
had
know has
that.
a racial component too. So like that's yeah.
I've had that happen a couple times. I actually had that happen today, surprisingly, where a couple of my friend groups, they're just like, "Oh, we're gonna be friends with you now." I'm like, "Okay, why?" Like, I wasn't expecting this.
Mhm.
Kind of just threw the friend group into like a circle kind of thing, and I'm like, "Okay." As soon as I mentioned note taker, like I mentioned it the first day, and they're like, "I want to do it." I'm like, "Bro, all right, okay." I was kind of like scared because I'm like, all right, I don't know how to handle this, so it's definitely something to, not only for me, it's definitely something to work on and kind of remember, hey, like it's okay to be afraid, but at the same time, you're asking for something that you need.
Mhm. Um, so we have a question sort of
Mhm.
in going this,
Direction.
thank you.
You're welcome.
About essential aspects. What
Mm,
are some of the essential aspects to developing and maintaining an inclusive and accessible learning environment for all students? And I know people talk a lot about maybe not a lot about,
mm,
but universal design for learning and how it's different from differentiating. And just sort of a core component of that, I think, is one, recognizing that variability is normal. Human variability is normal. And I think another part of that is recognizing that there are some essential things we can do that support that support most learners, right? And, baseline, many of us know visuals in addition to text. So not being 100% text dependent, but including visuals is a support for most learners. That includes um, kids who are learning the English language, in addition to kids who have barriers to communication. So what are some other, and Stephanie, you want to jump on this? What are some other sort of essential things? Another essential thing is basically just welcome and welcoming all learners as learners, even even our nonverbal learners. Welcoming, when I say all, I mean all. And people who know me know I've had all kinds of students, and I really mean it. So, yeah, okay. Stephanie.
Yeah, I've worked at I mean in my 12 years of teaching, I've worked at several schools, some of which have had students with we call it full inclusion. So it's student there's not really a special day class at all. It's a
mm,
fully inclusive model. And then students go outside of the room for another teacher to get a little bit more support. So that's actually where I started teaching. I didn't have students in special day. They were in my class and there wasn't a separation. There was pull-out support, but students were in my class. And so of all different learning types and strategies and behavior learning types and strategies and such. So this is like we're literally where I cut my teeth in education. And so for me, having my experiences as a learner and then combined with my experiences with different students from myself in my classroom in my very early years of teaching, ultimately what I did was I keep the goal of what I'm teaching forefront in my mind.
Mm.
And we can get there however we need to. So what I mean is, like, I have vocabulary words my kids are currently working on. They're literally right by my finger. They're back here. And so I have several different games that we can play. One is a conversational game where they try to use the words as often as possible in conversation, which wouldn't work for a silent type student, but does work for my really chatty ones. I have other games that they can do if they really want to opt out. Like, if I feel a student is not vibing with the activity that is meant to be fun and enjoyable, I'm going to put them on a different activity. It's not a fight. This is not a fight. I don't fight my students. If they're being, what's the word when they're going directly against you? Defiant. Thank you. If a student's being quote unquote defiant, I don't take that personally. I figured there's an underlying reason. I mean, this is oftentimes why I'm the teacher that a lot of students that are labeled as defiant learners are put in my classroom, is because they're not defiant for me. We work within the means of what we're currently working with. So I focus on the goal nonstop. My goal is for these students to learn these words, use them, and understand them. So I can have them on video games with the words. That's great for a lot of my silent type kids and kids that love enjoying games. I also then do a guessing game where the kids put the word on their head and then they have to like guess what word you are. Go walk around and be like, oh, you're, what's one of my words right now? Assemble. So, Avengers. And then they like Avengers getting together and making a team. And then they're like, oh, I'm the assemble word. And then they go find someone else. And so I can have them read the definitions. I can have them write notes. There's so many, that's kind of what I see as universal design, is that every student has access to those. I don't need a student with an IEP or a 504 to have access to those options. It's anyone who feels that that's the best way that they're up for learning that day.
Mhm.
And that can change day to day.
Mhm.
So to me, that's what I kind of got out of my own educational experience and my own training, was how many different ways can I meet the goal? Because the goal is what matters here, not my methodology of how I get there. So
Um,
not be flexible.
and just I want to again open up the chat because I love what you're saying about really there's a destination and there can be as many different pathways to that destination as needed.
Mhm.
And so as an educational community, how do you all feel about that? What do you think about that? How does that show up in your own teaching practice? Um, yeah, so the chat is open and please, again, what are some ways that you provide multiple pathways for students? What are some ways that you provide that flexibility? AJ and Ian, what are some ways that you have received that flexibility from educators?
As I was listening, I was reminding of a situation going in. So my freshman year of high school, one of the things that's very important in my 504 is being able to take breaks when I need them, whether that's going outside. If my tics get really bad, I maybe don't want to deal with that in front of other students, and having an opportunity to take breaks, which has always been very respected by my teachers. But I remember walking into one of my classes my freshman year and seeing like on the wall that there was basically kind of used a hand signal system for like needing to get up and like go get some water because the water fountain was like right across the hall, like 2 steps away. Or another one, which was I need to leave the room to go take a break. Now, for some, most of the time, that means going to the bathroom, but that also meant like people who needed the break. And that I remember walking in and seeing that and being so excited, because that meant that I wasn't drawing extra attention to myself as getting extra breaks, talking to friends who don't have any diagnoses or disabilities, sometimes they just get stressed, and being able to take a quick little break without publicly announcing to all the other high schoolers in the room, I'm stressed and I need a break, because that's hard. And a lot of times I don't take breaks when I need them, because it's a lot to ask for help, and being able to just have a solution of things like that that's available to everyone not only benefits me and other students like me in a way, but also allowing students who we don't often see as needing them, being able to access support.
I like that also because it's something that is relatively simple, but it's relatively simple, but it has a huge impact.
I really love that. One of my favorite things, because I'm a really loud teacher and I kind of run a chaotic classroom. One of the things that I love is I have a desk set up in my hallway where it's much quieter, and any student can go out there and work out there or take a break out there or compose out there. So I have a student this year who really needs more quiet, and they just do a lot of their work out there. And it's like, yep, you're all good. That there's no need to have a plan. There's no need to tell me why. It's just what you need right now. Or I'm right by the grass, so my students can run to the grass and back as many times as they need. Do you know how many squirrels I have in my classroom? Do you know how much easier it is if they can get their squirrely selves to do something? And I've had students before that can't stand running. That's not their jam. Then I have the ability, they can listen to a song on YouTube in my library with headphones. Just whatever you need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, some of this freedom dreaming question and essential aspect question are open to the chat. So if you have some things you would like to see happen in education, please join us in this conversation.
One thing that now that you say that, from the college perspective, one thing that I still want to see happen is being able to open up to not only my school, not only my friends, not only, my professors, but to other people like me, to be able to tell them, hey, there's a space for you here. There's a space for you to be you, and this actually kind of ties into my program. That's kind of what my program does. It allows for us to have a space where we can play sports. We can, go and learn and understand, the game of life, the game of basketball, and that's what I do. That's what I love, Basketball is my outlet. When I'm stressed, that's what I do. I do basketball. Like that's the biggest part of me, and that's, besides me being a gigantic Bob Marley fan and a big, football fan, those are the other parts of me, and that's what educators see. That's what they see. They see the happy, they see the joy. I try to bring that to the table. I try to make sure that when I'm in a classroom, I bring the happy. I bring that powerful, smile. Like this right here, this is what teachers see. They see the smile and they're like, you light up a room when you walk in. You're like, happy, hi, how's it going? I'm friendly, I can, make friends in an instant. That's kind of who I am, and I love that about me. And definitely I appreciate, all teachers for who they are and what they do, because without the high school teachers, we probably wouldn't be doing what we're doing in the college world. We probably even wouldn't have that opportunity as disabled students to do so. And so it's definitely a win-win situation, for us. I feel like I have this quote that I actually wrote, that I actually shocked my mom with when I told her that I wrote this quote. It says, if you can't hear us, you can't see us. And if you can't see us, you can't understand us. So what that basically saying is that if they don't hear what we're trying to tell them, then they can't see what the outcome and the results are going to be. And if they can't see what the outcome and the results are going to be, then they can't understand what we're trying to communicate or physically, communicate, whether that be nonverbal or verbal, And so I have this, um, I'm also a part of the San Francisco of the Arc. And so what that basically is I I'm one of their newer clients, and so I'm actually taking an ASL class so I can talk to those nonverbal kids to be able to communicate with them and actually, understand what they need and what they want to do or what they want to say.
Mhm.
You
One
know,
of the thing that I sort of bringing what all of you just said together,
Mhm,
I think, and I know we have to close soon. So
mhm,
I think if there was one thing that sort of unites, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you've all said is that who our students are is enough.
mm, yes.
And when we experience or create opportunities to affirm who a learner is in our classroom, we are doing them a great service. To
Mhm,
affirm and to say who you are is enough. You don't have to earn your way into this room. You are a learner,
mm,
and I'm approaching you as a learner,
Yep,
as you
exactly.
are.
Yep, exactly. Come as you are, as I like to say, come as you are, be who you are.
That is powerful. Any
Yeah.
other last words out
Just
there?
listen. I would say just listen. Just listen to your voice. Just listen to the power inside of you.
Mhm.
Be that shining light that everyone needs.
Mhm. AJ, any last words for you?
I think um, from a student perspective for teachers is when teachers create a space where they're open to feedback,
Mm,
especially in high school and where they have opportunities and they're saying, what can I do to make this better? What can I do to make this, what can I, when they're asking for feedback or just creating a space where that feels welcome, um, as opposed to being on the very like offensive of the flip side of that.
That's a great reminder, AJ. Um, for me, also wrapping up with like, as a student, just a reminder that we are trying. Sorry, my um, we're like your learners are trying. And if you feel like they're not, there's some kind of barrier emotionally um that has been set up at some point. Because like people want to do their best. We feel good while we're trying. And so like as someone who struggles with executive function, and that was really where I struggled the most in school, like I'm trying and giving us the benefit of the doubt is really important.
Mhm.
So yeah. And I can, as a teacher, I get to do better than the way that I was taught. And so that's always been really important to me. And so
Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, thank you everyone for this time together. Thank you for your insights and for your really authentic expression. I think you've given me a lot to think about and to reflect on. Um, and with that, and thank you, San Leandro Teachers Association, for creating this event and for really uh, creating an opportunity for us to co-create, a better system for our students and a better world. Um, yeah, cool.
thank you, Nancy, for moderating this experience.
So good night, everybody. But if you want to stay on after we close this live thing, you can stay on and say hello. I would love to say hello to a few of you. And you can turn your cameras on and we can throw